There is a question that has been asked billions of times across the world. It sounds innocent, almost routine, and every single time someone asks it, neither side of the conversation can answer it honestly. The candidate does not know what will happen. The interviewer never checks whether it did, and yet this question continues to exist as a polished, professional, supposedly science-backed tool for evaluating a human being. The question is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Think about it for a moment. Can you answer it yourself? Not with the kind of answer that plays well in an interview, but with something that actually corresponds to reality. Most likely no. And that is not because you are bad at planning your life. It is because nobody can predict the future with the precision this question demands. Nobody ever could. And science has known this for a very long time. So let us talk about what science actually says and why the entire hiring industry is built on something much closer to guesswork than anyone in it is willing to admit. In 1998, psychologists Frank Schmidt and John Hunter published a study that became the most influential piece of research in personnel selection over the previous 85 years. They analyzed thousands of individual studies conducted by different methods in different countries and asked one simple question. Of everything we use when hiring, what actually correlates with how a person performs on the job? The answer was deeply uncomfortable for the entire industry. Education correlates with job performance at just 0.10. Work experience at 0.18. Statisticians call these coefficients unlikely to be useful. That means all the information in a resume, the thing HR professionals spend months scrutinizing, is almost entirely disconnected from how a person will actually perform in a new role. And unstructured interviews? The kind where you feel a spark and you try to read someone's character from their eyes and the way they speak, those account for less than 15% of the variation in their subsequent performance. 15%. Which means that in 85 out of 100 cases, your right candidate could have been the wrong one, and the person you rejected could have been flawless. Education explains 10% of the outcome. Experience explains 18%. And the inner world of the candidate, the thing we try to read during the interview, explains almost nothing. But Schmidt and Hunter are only the beginning. That same year, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky described a phenomenon they called the planning fallacy. People are systematically incapable of predicting even their own future behavior. Even in situations where past experience is practically screaming at them about what is actually going to happen. We build plans based on the ideal scenario, carefully leaving out every obstacle, every delay, every catastrophe that has already happened to us in exactly the same circumstances. And we do it again and again, not out of bad faith, not out of poor memory. It is a structure of thought. It is wired into how our brains work, and it cannot be overridden simply by trying harder. Now, if you want to see how an industry turns this kind of guesswork into a profession, look at 3 practices that are so deeply entrenched that no one questions them anymore. They exist not because they have proven their effectiveness. They exist because someone once decided they should exist, and after that, no one thought to check whether they actually work. The first is the attempt to read a candidate's motivation. What attracts you to this role? Why do you want to work with us? The idea is that if you ask the right question in the right tone, the person will open up and reveal their inner world. And you will understand how serious they are, how genuine their intentions are. But here is the problem this logic ignores entirely. People do not understand themselves well enough to describe their own motivations with the precision this kind of assessment requires. Research by Kohler and Poon showed something important. The strength of intention, that feeling of, I want to do this, that a person experiences in the moment of answering, has almost no bearing on whether they actually follow through. Between what a person feels now and what happens later, there is a gap that no interview can bridge. The second practice is loyalty assessment. Companies invest serious budgets and effort into determining before a person even starts working whether they will stay. Over the past several decades, an entire ecosystem of tools has been built for exactly this purpose. Questionnaires, specialized tests, multi-stage procedures where every question is supposed to somehow reveal the candidate's future devotion. But research published in Frontiers in Psychology in 2022 states with rare candor what practitioners have long suspected. Quote, loyalty research is still at an experimental stage. 40 years of studying this phenomenon, dozens of measurement models developed, and not a single one produces a reliable forecast. And here is why that actually makes sense. Loyalty is not a property of a person that you can measure, like height or weight. It is the state of their relationship with a specific company at a specific moment in time. It changes every single day. You cannot capture it on a Monday and expect it to remain the same on Thursday. And the third practice, perhaps the most telling of all, is that very question about 5 years. It exists as a professional tool with one single purpose: to determine how serious the candidate is and whether their time horizon aligns with the company's. The logic seems airtight until you start asking uncomfortable questions. In 5 years, neither the company nor the candidate will be the same. The market will have shifted. The strategy will have changed. The person's circumstances may have transformed so fundamentally that their priorities become unrecognizable. And despite all of this, we ask them to tell us now what will happen then, and we evaluate them based on that answer. But why exactly this is impossible deserves to be examined on its own. There is a risk that exists in every single hire, but that almost no one speaks about directly, as though acknowledging it would itself be some kind of professional failing. This is the risk of unpredictability. Not rare unpredictability, not exceptional, fundamental, unavoidable, present in every decision about whether to bring someone on board. Consider it from the candidate's side. A person joins a company fully engaged, serious, genuinely committed, ready to work. And then, 6 months later, something happens. The kind of thing that happens in every person's life. A loved one is diagnosed with cancer, or they themselves receive a diagnosis that changes everything, or someone they are closest to leaves, or a quiet, gradual, but completely unavoidable realization sets in. The things that seemed important when they were sitting across from the interviewer no longer are. Their priorities have shifted, not out of bad faith, not out of any lack of professionalism. Something simply happened, something that did not yet exist at the moment the hiring decision was made. None of the questions asked during that interview could have predicted this, simply because what needed predicting did not yet exist. Now consider the same situation from the company's side. It hired someone for a specific task, for a specific reality that existed at that moment. 3 months later, the market turned in a different direction, or the strategy changed under the influence of events that no one in leadership foresaw, and the task for which the hire was made ceased to be that task. A person who was an absolutely perfect fit for yesterday's objectives may become entirely irrelevant to today's, not because they changed, but because the entire reality around them did. This risk is not an exception. It is a business risk that exists in every hire on both sides simultaneously, and that cannot be eliminated by any procedure, any test, or any hours-long assessment. It exists because the future, that specific future, in which this specific person will work, simply does not exist at the moment we decide to hire them. At the moment of hiring, only the present exists, and the only thing that can genuinely be assessed in this present is a person's skills and their past experience. Everything else is speculation about something that has not yet materialized. So why do we continue? The question is not why the HR industry exists. The question is why it exists in exactly the form it takes today. Why do we invest significant resources in tools whose effectiveness has not been rigorously demonstrated and still feel like thoroughly professional, competent people? The answer is simple, but deeply uncomfortable for anyone who has built a career inside this system. People cannot exist in a space of total uncertainty. They need the feeling of control over a situation, even if that control is largely illusory. Cultural fit, growth potential, red flags, intrinsic motivation. These are not scientific categories in the way they exist in psychology or statistics. They are categories of confidence. Professional language creates the impression that every hiring decision is made rationally, on the basis of data, with a deep understanding of human nature. But behind each of these terms lies exactly the same thing that lies behind any prediction about the future: intuition, simply wrapped in professional terminology. The industry evolves not because the tools become more precise. It evolves because the need for the illusion of control never disappears. It exists in every organization at every level. Each new personality test, each new loyalty model, each new interview methodology is a new and more sophisticated way of convincing ourselves that we can know what is fundamentally unknowable. But science does offer an answer to the question of how to hire effectively. It simply looks different from what we have grown accustomed to. Schmidt and Hunter, in the very same study where they exposed the limitations of traditional methods, also identified what actually works. Structured interviews with a validity of 0.51, where the same questions are asked of every candidate and evaluation is conducted on a single unified scale. Cognitive tests with the same validity, and, particularly important for practice, work samples, tasks that a person completes right there during the assessment, doing exactly what they would do on the job. Not tell me about yourself, not what is your dream, a concrete task, a concrete result, a concrete measurement. In 2022, Sackett and colleagues conducted a new large-scale meta-analysis, the largest in 20 years, and confirmed and in many ways revised these findings. Most previous validity estimates turned out to be inflated due to errors in statistical corrections. But one conclusion only grew stronger. Structured interviewing proved to be the single most powerful predictor of job performance. Stronger than cognitive tests, stronger than personality assessments, stronger than all the instruments that form the backbone of modern HR practice. But only under one condition. The interview must be conducted strictly according to protocol. The same questions for every candidate, a unified system for evaluating answers, and every question must connect directly to the specific requirements of the role. Nothing about the soul, nothing about 5 years, only what can be measured right now. When we hire someone, there are exactly 2 layers of reality. The first is what exists right now: a person's skills, their experience, their demonstrated ability to perform certain tasks, confirmed by concrete results. The second is everything else: their motivation tomorrow, their loyalty a year from now, the way their life will unfold over the next 5 years. The first layer can be assessed, the second cannot. Not because our diagnostics are insufficiently refined, or because better methods exist that we have not yet discovered, but because the second layer simply does not exist at the moment of assessment. It is made up of events that have not yet happened, decisions that have not yet been made, circumstances that no one yet knows about. Not the candidate, not the company, not anyone. It is more honest to acknowledge this than to keep pretending. The best hiring decisions are made not when we finally read the soul of a candidate, but when we stop trying to do so and begin assessing the only thing that can genuinely be assessed: what a person can do and what they have already done. The rest is guesswork, simply very professionally dressed up.